as we go through. Please feel free to stop me at any time with any questions you have. Yep. So, why are we here today? We are here to support the Lieutenant Governor's Entrepreneurship Challenge. As teachers, we are the front line to really help and work with students who are looking to apply their ideas and hopefully explore the idea of becoming entrepreneurs. So it's not just coming up with some idea, it's actually turning it into a viable business. So the intent of a challenge like this is to say it goes beyond your science fair. We want to commercialize it. We want to turn it into a real business. That doesn't mean every student has to do this. It doesn't mean every student will do this. But it's an introduction that I think an academic setting may not give them in all cases. So it's something beyond school and give someone an alternative to other paths in life. So the things you're going to learn today, you're going to learn about the Lieutenant Governor's Entrepreneurship Challenge. So I'm going to give you all the details about it, what it means to apply, how do you apply, what are the criteria. But I'm also going to then get into actually how to work with your students. So we're going to work through something called the Business Model Canvas. Anybody know what that is? Good. A couple people. But I'm going to go through that in detail so that you know how to work with them to help flesh out those ideas. And then we're going to work through also pitches, how to actually do a pitch. You guys are going to get your hands dirty with some of these things, so I'm going to ask you to actually do these things today so that you then know how to work with your students on them. I'm going to work in detail through the written application portion so that as the rubric states, what would that actually entail for the student to do? And then for the pitch as well, there's a rubric. So I've aligned the rubric with my ideal 10 slides that your students will create for their pitch. Other than that, we're going to try and have some fun, but it's going to be a lot of, as I said, me talking at you. So if you guys have any questions, I'd like to make it as much of a dialogue as I can. So without further ado, I'll get into it. So new in 2017, this is for students grades 9 through 12. So this is high school students. The goals are to introduce entrepreneurship, create a realistic business environment, promote future business ownership, and promote lifelong learning. I believe those last two things are really interesting aspects because I started in the corporate world. I spent 10 years working for Accenture. I then became an entrepreneur by going over to Africa to work at an accelerator and all this long story. But the end result was I've really believe and feel through my own experience that becoming an entrepreneur actually will make me a better employee if I choose to go back to a corporate world, or will also just enable me to do anything better in my life because it changes my mindset. So I like this idea of promoting lifelong learning and being an entrepreneur so that you own whatever you have. Even if you are working for the government or you're working as a janitor, you have ownership over that. And that's what is important, I think, about entrepreneurship. Is how can you always strive to make it better. So as far as prizes, I think the students will be very interested to learn this. What's in it for me beyond learning? That's a teenager mentality, I believe. But the idea is that everyone on that team, and I'll get into what the team comprises, will receive a personalized gift. I have no idea what that looks like. Maybe Christine can clarify that at some point. But there will be some gift that will be given to the entire team. So as part of competing, there's something involved beyond just the learning. There are prizes at the state level valuated at $80,000 at this time. I know that they're continuing to find new sponsors who are interested in supporting this initiative. Those prizes mainly will be, it sounds like, in-state tuitions, scholarships is the word, for Kentucky-based post-secondary institutions. They say cash winnings for adult advisors. I'm not sure what that looks like. But I believe they cannot give cash to the students. Great. So just for the recording's purpose, I'm going to repeat that. So the $80,000 will be split amongst the first three teams. If the first team wins, say $30,000, that will be split amongst the team members that are involved. That money will then, from a scholarship perspective, will be put into a trust that then will go into the institution if that student so chooses to go to it within the state of Kentucky. There will be ideally some in-kind services, hopefully some legal, accounting, marketing, business services that could also come in kind. Again, the details hopefully will be clearer as time goes on, but in general, there will be prizes allotted to those students. So I'll get into the agenda today. So from 9 to 9:15, we did an introduction. 9:15 to 9:45, we're going to go over kind of what the LGEC is, which I believe we may have already covered. No, I still have more to do. And then after that, I'm going to talk to you about what is it like working with your students. So that's when we're going to go over the business model canvas. And I have a nice few handouts I can give you guys to walk through that. 10:45, give or take, we're going to do a 15-minute break. And then from 11 to 11:30, we're actually going to have you guys creating your own business models. If you have this great idea that you want to work on, awesome. If you don't have an idea, I have some prompts, so no worries. And then after that, we're going to go through the written application review. So I'm going to go through the details of that written application. In the afternoon, we're going to grab lunch really quickly. I'm going to give you guys 15 minutes. We're going to have lunch sponsored by Scripps. So we're going to have you guys get lunch, but we're going to get right back into our seats so that I can start going through the pitch overview. And then the fun part happens where you guys get to actually do pitches of your businesses. So you will work together to create a 10-slide presentation. And you will pitch, and then I will critique it, as will the other people in the audience, so that we can go through what it's like to actually critique students. And then finally, those pitches will happen. So that'll be the day. Any questions about that? Everybody know where the bathroom is? Bathroom's out to the right, down the hall. So how are you going to get support as we go through this process? Casey, myself, Cheryl, we are the local Kentucky Innovation Network office. So we, I believe, will probably be your front line of defense if you have any questions that come along. I'm going to give you guys this presentation afterward as a PDF. So anything in here that you may have missed when you write down, I will give it to you so you'll have a copy, just to save that scribbling and scrawling. And then from an event perspective at the state level, Christine is probably going to be your first line of defense there with any main questions. And I'll get into details about maybe the two roles and the support that we can give there. So those are the main contacts that we have. So getting into more detail about the actual application process, as I said before, it's grades 9 through 12. This concludes public, private, and homeschooled individuals. So as educators here today, as those watching this video later, you are the advocates to get students involved. You've come here today because you're interested in entrepreneurship, you're interested in supporting these students. So any student you can reach, and any school in the state of Kentucky, even outside of school, any student really, can apply. But you must have at least 2 students per team, and no more than 4. Hence my lines of people. But you have to have at least 2 students per team. And you must have at least 2 adult advisors. There can be more than 1 or more than 2 adult advisors, but there has to be at least 2. Typically what we're probably going to see is we're going to have a teacher who's the advisor as one of them. And another would just be any other individual. Probably could be another teacher. But ideally someone who has experience running a business. So we're hard at work right now looking to find business advisors to help create a pool of individuals to help these students. But if you know anyone who, friend, family, who has run a business, who's started a business before, can be an advisor, that's also appropriate as well. But the key is that individual... Yep. So the online portal will have a place for people to register online. Yes. Is there a limit to the number of groups that an advisor can advise? No. The students can work with any student in the state of Kentucky. So if they have a friend who lives in Louisville and they're in northern Kentucky, they can do that, but it's kind of weird because of the lines. The regional challenge. The reality is, if you're a homeschooled individual and you have friends that go to school, you can pair up, and then that would make sense. Any questions? Cool. Good question. So how do you register right now? There's a website out. It's kylgec.com, and there is an apply. And through the magic of technology, I'm actually going to show you guys that website right now. Hopefully. Yes. Yes. Wow, that just quit on me. Yeah, the question was whether or not a graduating senior would be able to do this, and yes, you will be able to participate. KYLGEC. So while that is loading, I will get back to the presentation. Hopefully it'll load at some point. So when you go to that website, there's the ability to register, and the registration process is fairly straightforward. And what it means is that you have to have at least 2 of the team members. Christine, if they add a third person later on, can they, or do they have to have everyone right away? They could add the third later, but you have to have at least 2. It's required fields. So there's 2 student team members who have to have their full contact details. That's name, address, phone number, email. They create usernames for each team member that allows each independently to log into that website. You have to also, in that application, put the names and contact information of your 2 advisors. So there is a little homework that has to go into this prior to the intent to compete that is due on February 1st. So the intent to compete really means that you fill that out by February 1st, and there are 3 milestones in there, which is you have to have a project name, so what's the name of your business, there's school information and team information. Those are the 3 milestones you must meet by February 1st. It's a bare minimum, so it's very important that that's communicated. The other things that come in there are a written business outline and a pitch. I actually mistakenly put must have that to register. You do not need the written business outline or the pitch to register. That's what's due on March 1st. The outline, and is the pitch not included? Okay. Need to update that website. So the pitch itself is not due, that's correct, so that's good. So the business plan has to be submitted in PDF. So the system does check the type of file, so the students can create this however they want. But the outline has to have all the components that are the written piece that we're going to go over. They can do it in Word, they can do it in PowerPoint, they can actually do this in anything that they really want, but it just has to be in PDF format. So they can make it look as nice as they want. Yeah, so if you're trying to clarify and elucidate the marketing data, you can have graphs that they found through research. If you're looking to establish the market size, you can make that look really nice with pie charts versus just putting numbers or written text. There are ways around that. The rubric does not really clarify that you need to do that, but if it helps clarify for the judges, it can put them a step ahead. So the creativity is encouraged, not required, but encouraged, because I think it'll help present something more credible. Any questions? Cool. So the competition dates are as follows. So there's different zones in the state of Kentucky, and here it is. The way that they've outlined it, there are 5 zones. We are located in Zone 4. The top 2 teams from each region will advance after the regional. I'll go back to that. So on April 12th, Zone 4's competition will be at Berea College. Then the state competition will follow April 29th down at UK. So we have these nice vertical swaths that span the entire north-south piece of Kentucky. And 2 from each, so we'll have 10 teams that will go down to Lexington to compete for that final. So for those regional competitions, any team that submits an intent to compete form by February 1st and a completed business plan will receive confirmation to compete at their regional competition. Each team has 10 minutes to pitch their business plan to a panel of judges. They're not going to read their written application. That will have been scored ahead of time, which is 50% of their total weighted score. And they'll also have 10 minutes to do Q&A. Yeah, so if you guys have seen Shark Tank, most people have, you're going to come in with, it's a 10-slide pitch, and you'll have 10 minutes to pitch that. So the more engaging pitch is going to be better. Not an academic thing. It's going to be very much, and I'll get into kind of the way that I would do that. But fundamentally, there's a rubric that scores how well you do. So the content needs to be in there, but if you can make that engaging, that's better versus just making it a, here's my presentation sort of thing. You might all be thinking, well, regionally, that's a lot of kids that could be going to these, and that's a possibility. We could have a lot of different students coming there. So we're going to have to ramp up our scale as accordingly with how many applications we receive. So how are the students evaluated? I've included these links here. We're going to go through this in detail. But there are 2 rubrics that are very detailed in nature that we will be walking through so that there's no questions or ambiguity around this. So how do you get help? How do you as teachers get help? Well, you're here, so that's one way you're going to get help. So I'm going to be able to give you some information that's going to be able to help you work with those students more effectively. But there's a great online course that the folks at KSTC have put together that for the sake of time, I'm probably not going to go through. But you guys use Blackboard or heard of Blackboard.com? Well, there's a free version of what they offer called Course Sites. And we've created a curriculum that's multiple modules that walks through everything you need to know about working with an early stage entrepreneur who's formulating their business model. So really, it's all of the content you need to help them build the right written application and pitch. So I'm going to cover a lot of those topics today, but afterward, you can go and use that as a great resource to help guide you further. And you will have to email Christine Wilds. There's her email address. In order to be registered for that course, she will send you a personal invitation. Very nice of her. For each an individual that wants to get on there. This will also be available for the students to register. Okay. So as students apply to use the online course, please group together so that Christine can more effectively put you into a group when you're applying. Contact your Kentucky Innovation Network representatives, so myself, Casey, Cheryl, will be able to help you guys out as well as you have any questions. We're a regional asset, so we're located down in Covington, as Casey said. So if there's any time where a student or you need some support, business advisors, individuals can feel free to contact us, and we will schedule some time to meet with you to work through that as well. And then there is a FAQ on their website as well. So there are some resources. There's a lot of videos. Actually, that first link there, there's a lot of videos as well on their website. But I think the best thing you're going to do is use that online course because it has a lot of detailed information beyond what we're going to talk about today. All right. So we're going to talk through a little bit of a course that I do when I work with entrepreneurs to talk about what is entrepreneurship, how do you become an entrepreneur, and then we're going to have a break. So what is entrepreneurship? Anybody have any ideas? Like what would you define as being an entrepreneur, or what is entrepreneurship to you? So building an enterprise that produces revenue and income without you doing the work. So you end up being the owner and you facilitate and enable people to run that business, that enterprise. Cool.
Making money while you sleep.
So make money while you sleep. I wish that would happen. My goal. Or while you're doing something else. There's no wrong answer, in my opinion. I think entrepreneurs are individuals who see challenges in the world, problems in the world, and they're problem solvers. They're coming up with solutions to these problems that people are willing to pay for to solve them. That's what it's all about, saying, I've identified a problem, and I can get someone to pay for it. So pretty much finding a solution to something that's really hard, and people are going to pay for that because they're just like, yes, thank you. And some are more obvious than others. So entrepreneurs, it's not about ideas, it's about making ideas happen. So I meet a lot of people that have all these ideas. Business, an entrepreneur, a business is really, it's 10% the idea, it's 90% the work, the execution. So anybody that's holding onto their idea, I kind of just laugh. I don't laugh at them, but I kind of just say that it's ridiculous because the reality is if you don't make it happen, it doesn't matter what your idea is. I don't care how good your idea is. So we want to help foster these students to take their ideas and actually make them a reality. That's what this is all about. That's what entrepreneurship is really about. No more romanticizing about how cool it is to be an entrepreneur. It's a struggle to save your company's life and your own skin every day of the week. You jump off a cliff and you assemble an airplane on the way down. It really is hard, and that's something that I think is really important to teach students as well, is that Shark Tank is Hollywood. There's nothing real about that room. The pitches are pretty good, and I think they can be emulated. But everything else about it is it's glamorized. They don't understand how hard it was for that entrepreneur to come up with that idea, to take that time, effort, build the prototype, get in front of customers, sell it, figure out the financials, take the time to actually go and be on TV. I mean, that's nerve-wracking. You could get totally rejected. So I think it's really important, again, that we state that to our students, that this is a hard life to live, but the reward is very high. And it's very meaningful to a lot of people. So what are the qualities of an entrepreneur to make it really work? You have to have passion for that idea. You don't do it to make money. You do it to solve a problem. And, oh, by the way, you can make money along the way. Because as soon as things get hard, if you don't have the passion to overcome those challenges, you're going to quit right away. But if your passion lies in really helping someone solve that problem, you solving that problem, you're going to be going a lot further. Persistence. You have to get up when you fall down. You cannot give up. But this is a great lesson that entrepreneurship can teach you, is that when things get hard, you don't. You pick yourself up, dust off, and keep going. You have to be confident. You have to be sure. I mean, you're going to meet a lot of people who are going to be naysayers. They're going to doubt you and say, that's the stupidest idea I've ever heard. But if you can be confident, you want to listen to people. You want to be coached. But if you're confident enough to know, no, I can do this, that's important. And I think that's what entrepreneurship can build in a lot of students as well, is that confidence. Being a self-starter. This honestly was something that I struggled with when I went into the corporate world. There was a lot of like, okay, tell me what to do. I'll do it. I'll get it done. And when my job was done, it's kind of like, okay, what do I do now? And I think as an entrepreneur, you get that mentality of like, you know what, I'm always going to look for the next thing. Even when I'm done, I'm going to keep adding to the team. I'm going to keep making it better. So you'll be a self-starter. Being able to wear all hats of a business. It's no more, hey, I'm the marketing guy. I'm doing this. I'm only going to do I'm doing social media. I'm going to do Facebook posts all day. No, like as an entrepreneur, you're doing everything. But I think that's what's awesome about it, is that you never get bored. You're always learning. You have to get better at you have to understand what finance is. You need to know how to market. You need to know how to sell. You need to know how to build a product effectively. And that wearing all those hats makes you a really valuable individual. Again, even if your business fails and you go work for a company, you're going to be more valuable because you understand the whole aspect of that business. And not just your silo. You're a problem solver. Goes without saying. And your ability to handle tough situations and stress. So I had a great entrepreneur who told me, what's it like to be an entrepreneur? He said, well, it's kind of like brain waves. Like when nothing's really going on, you're just kind of hanging out, the brain waves are kind of doing this. They're kind of flatlining. Nothing really exciting. Things are pretty chill. That's what normal kind of corporate world where you're just kind of cruising along, no big deal. You might have a blip here or there, but nothing big. But as an entrepreneur, and you're in a state of excitement, your brain waves are doing this, going up and down. And you're riding this roller coaster, and that's what an entrepreneur is really like. You have your high highs and you have your low lows. But when you're riding that roller coaster back up, that's what makes it all worthwhile. And that's how you handle those tough situations, though. You get used to it. You crave it. You kind of love that chaos. It's a wild world, but it's the way that entrepreneurs, I think, believe and think. So there's two types of companies that exist, and I'm going to talk about these two types because I think that most of the applications that your students will have will be more of the latter than the former, and they should be. So a proven idea. It's been done before, established markets. The examples I put up here are franchises, gas stations, bakeries. These are the ideas that I think are valid and valuable aspects of entrepreneurship. There's nothing wrong with that type of business. I think there are more entrepreneurs like this than another anyway. They're less risky because they're proven business models. So if you see a gas station, you know how it works. You can just emulate what that one's doing. You can make slight improvements. You can offer different types of food, whatever. But fundamentally, it's the same type of business. So that's a business that, again, is valid and can be something that many of your students want to do when they get older. But for this competition, they're looking for that next big thing, these unproven business models. And the techniques I'm going to talk to you about today are more along this line anyway. Any questions about that? So if you would build a better mousetrap, if it's truly innovative and unheard of, then I think it still fits well. It's a small micro improvement. That's where I'm kind of like, eh. But yeah, I think when you're talking about products versus like established brick and mortar businesses, you probably could say that any variation on a product, slight improvement, could fit here pretty well. And I think that's where, as trainers, as advisors, we can work with those students to help validate those ideas. And if we say, maybe that's not the next big thing, my opinion is that the judges are probably going to pick those next big things over those small micro improvements. So if you're really looking to win the competition, then you're probably going to want to go for that next bigger thing. But if you're really interested and passionate about that idea, then let the student go through it. That's where the passion lies, right? So if the student is passionate, they should do it anyway. It's all about the education and experience at that level. So I'm kind of interjecting my opinion on it, but I believe that when they come to judge time, they'll probably look for those next big things. Yeah, so from an app perspective, you're right. If students are looking to do a software solution, a mobile application, 9 times out of 10, your idea is not going to be original. So the key will be in that situation, and we'll talk about this here, is your clear market differentiator. What differentiates you from the existing competition? We know that anything that anyone builds is never really all that new, and there's always competition to what they're trying to solve. So we have to establish with our students, how do you win? So we know there's competition. How are we going to be better than them? What's the value proposition that we're going to offer to customers that's going to change their mind from using that current solution or that competitor's solution to using ours? So sometimes a lot of people believe that it's okay. It's actually a validation that if there is competition in that market, that it's worthwhile pursuing it because it means that a market exists. A lot of times, early stage tech entrepreneurs will start with something and no market does exist. And so they have to spend a lot more time educating the market and validating that people will be willing to pay for it. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, so I think it's okay. But it is their job to prove that theirs is better. Any other questions? Cool. So I call this the 6 steps, because 5 would be too few and 7 would be too many. But I'm only going to talk about 4 of those today because they don't all apply to the LGEC. So this is something, again, I do for all around the 11 counties that we oversee helping entrepreneurs. So the 6 steps are fairly simple, and I'm going to talk through each one of these so that, except for those last 2, so that we get an idea of how this process would be something you can actually apply in working with your students. So step 1 is refining that idea. You have this great idea. You're out in the market and you just saw some problem. And you're like, I have a great solution for this. So how do you actually refine that into something? So we refine that idea by creating assumptions. Yeah, Dan had a good point. So prior to this, you have to have an idea, right? And if you have no idea, you can't really apply. So one of the things we have online, on that online course, is a module related to ideation. So how do you work through these ideas? How do you come up with a business? So part of me says that's a very hard thing to do sometimes because you're trying to fit a round peg in a square hole. So from an education perspective today, I'm not actually going to talk a lot about that ideation, but to Dan's point, it is going to be something you might have to work with your students to help them flesh out what is the best idea that they have, or how do they even come up with one idea. Yeah. Yep. Yep. So there's actually a process known as the 5 whys, as you said, is root cause analysis. So you can use that process with folks as to why that problem exists to see if you can really understand what the true nature of that is. That actually will be something that you go through as you do this, and I'll clarify how we apply the 5 whys into this process. So it's a really good point. So what I said was you refine the idea and you create assumptions. and I'll explain what the assumption piece is. So we create an outline of the business model, and that outline is something we do with the business model canvas, which I'm going to walk through here in a minute. But the key is you have to define what is the problem I'm solving and for whom am I solving it. And as you stated, your first assumption of what the real problem is might not be the actual problem. So there is an important question as to why does that problem exist and doing that root cause analysis in that process. I'll clarify that outline of the business model here in a minute because that might not make much sense right now. You're going to research the market for competitors. So, as you stated, there might be other competitors out in this space. Is there anyone solving this problem today? So, one of the aspects and one of the great processes that we learn is market research. And I've found a lot of entrepreneurs don't go the extra mile to really research existing competitors in that space. And it's really important that one it's done through just general Google searches. And that's going to be your best thing. If you can find market research folks that have put out papers that speak to the competitors in that market space, that's great. Harder to get, and it's going to be very expensive in many cases. And there's another one that I'm going to talk through here in a minute. But fundamentally, the first thing is just do a general Google search for other competitors. Look in the app stores if you're doing a technology solution. Look in catalogs if you're trying to find a product that you're trying to mimic. Look on Kickstarter if you're doing something that's new and exciting product, because maybe someone out there is already doing it. Do that research. And then you have to do a general idea around, can I make money doing this? So a little bit of financial modeling gets into this. So by doing an initial cut at what do you think your costs are going to be versus the amount of money you can charge for it per unit, you can then extrapolate to say, can I actually make money at this? Do I have the skills and resources to make this work? If I need to build an app, can I? If I need to make a product out of a cast molded metal, do I know how to do that? Do I know anybody that can? And if you don't have the skills or resources, that's okay. That's not what this competition is about. This competition is about coming up with the idea and how do you start. But eventually, as that student looks to commercialize and turn this into a reality, they need to make sure they know the right people. That might be a partner that they have. That might be a mentor they have. It might be a teacher that can connect them with somebody. That might be some education they can take to learn how to code. And they'd be able to do it pretty quickly. Do I want to make a living doing this? Initially, you might have a hobby and you're like, oh, this would be awesome if I did this every day. But then if you really learn about the ins and outs, and I'll give you an example. I know somebody who started making handmade sewn crafts for babies and toddlers. They loved coming up with new ideas. They loved sewing. But then they started having to go to craft fairs and put stuff on Etsy and send out orders and respond to customers. I'm spending 90% of my time doing all this other stuff. I don't get to make anything anymore. So there's a little bit of that has to go into it. Is saying, do I really want to make this my everyday?
Great example of
Yep. The SBA, the Small Business Administration, has a list of 20 questions that you can do to start before starting your business. Not as applicable to the LGEC, but it's a good list of questions that an individual can look at to really say, do I want to be an entrepreneur? Do I want to start my own business? So back to that business outline. So we have this business model canvas. This was started in 2008, 2009. There's a gentleman by the name of Alexander Osterwalder who put this together. This is a freely available Creative Commons resource that can help you outline your business. And it's what we're actually going to be working on later today, not too long from now. And the way that I always go through this is it's nine sections. It's got all these great questions to ask you, so it's pretty much just a fill it in, answer the questions approach to creating your initial business model. But the two things you really need to focus on initially, and nothing else, you need to focus on customer segments and value proposition. Customer comes first. Everything has to be about the customer. Who is your customer? So when you're talking to your students, first question is, who's your customer? Well, it's parents. Okay, what ages? How many kids do they have? Is it the male or the female in the household? What income level are you looking at here? Is there a racial barrier that you have to overcome? So it really comes down to getting as granular as you can and understanding who is your primary customer. Who's going to be the most likely to buy the solution you have? And then it comes to the idea, the value proposition. What value are you really offering to that customer? So the purpose here is really tying these two together. And if you find a customer who has a problem and you have a solution that is good enough that they're willing to pay to solve it, something we call product market fit. That is the goal of your business. The only thing that matters initially. So if there's anything you can take away from this initial exercise with your students is saying those are the two most important things that you have to come up with. I'm going to get into the rest, but that's where you focus primarily. The next thing is customer relationships. What do we want that relationship to be like with our customers? Do I do direct sales? Do I go directly to their house and work with them? Do I install it myself? Do I provide 24/7 email support? Do I have a place of business that they can come into and actually meet with me? Or is it all done virtually? So it's just, what is that interaction like with your customer? Number 4 is customer channels. So how do you reach your customers? How do you sell to them? Is it going to be an e-commerce site? Are you going to sell software on the App Store? This also involves, how do you market to your customers? So as you're going to market and sell to them, are you going to call them up on the phone and do direct sales? Are you going to use Facebook ads? Are you going to use Google ads? So what are all the ways that you reach and sell to your customers? So I have that whole area in blue over there because that's my customer world. It's everything customer focused. On the left side of this chart are everything that's key to you, key partners. So if you do not have the skills to build what you need, who's your partner who's going to build it? Who's your partner that's going to provide you the algorithm that you need to process your database? Could even be a key partner as far as a mentor, someone who's a connector, who really helps with connections for you, who educates you. So key activities. Key activities for me is all about what do you need to start doing now to start building your business and delivering value to your customers. So this is kind of your foundational element for what becomes your project plan, your list of activities. You don't have to get everything down here because those activities can continually change, but it really gives you that idea of saying, what do I have to do next? What do I have to do next to get my business moving forward? And finally, what are the key resources that I need? Do I need money? Do I need copper to make my jewelry? Do I need a computer? Do I need software to start coding? What are those things that I really need to make my business work? That's what the key areas are. And then the final two things are your financials. So what are the costs that I have to incur to do business? What does it cost me to produce my product, my service? And then the revenue streams is, how do I make money? You can make money in more than one way. But how do I make money? Because if you don't make money, not a business. We call it monetization. What's your monetization strategy? That's what we need. So this is the business model canvas. Yes. They do and they should. They should understand what your top line revenue is versus your profit. In understanding your margin and your unit economics behind what it costs you actually to make each product, each unit, is important. Because they're going to have to put that into their pitch in some way, shape, or form. And those that go a little bit further are going to be more likely to win. When you're talking about an entire region and only 2 get selected, you're talking about needing to be top-notch in that field. So this is a business model canvas, and something that I told you guys before, which this is you create a business outline, and these are all assumptions. Everything up here is an assumption. As you create this, it's in your head. You've just spent a half an hour creating this, and everything you put down here is an assumption. You assume that that's your customer. You assume that's your relationship. You assume that's what they care about. And your goal is to go from I think to I know. There's some really smart guy that said that. I think it was me. No, I'm just kidding. So I did. I came up with this moniker because I think it's really important. It's going from I think to I know. Because I have so many entrepreneurs that say, I think this is my customer. I think this is what I'm going to charge them. I think. Well, that doesn't help you in business. You have to know. You have to be 100% certain on what you're doing. So your job as an entrepreneur and what you're teaching your students is to go out and know as much as you can about your business model. Anyone else need water? Oh, you're fine. So how do you go from an assumption to a fact? How do you go from this? You talk to people. You talk to your customers. Customer first. You're not going to learn anything in a silo. You're not going to learn anything by reading something on Google. You got to talk to your customers. Who you're going to sell to. If you're going to sell to a teacher, you're not going to talk to the superintendent. You're going to talk to the teacher. Because you need to validate that problem is worth solving and that it really exists. So this will probably be the hardest things for your students. And I know it's the hardest thing for most entrepreneurs. But if they're really passionate and they really care, they have to do this. They have to go and talk to their potential customer. Another thing to avoid, if you're advising a student, you're advising an entrepreneur at any age, say how many of these people that you talk to are not your friends or family? And everyone always kind of responds with a smirk because they're like, I didn't really talk to anybody else. Because your mom's going to lie to you, and your grandmother's going to lie to you, and your dad's going to lie to you. They're going to tell you this is the best thing I've ever seen. And especially when you're talking about students, they're probably going to talk to their dad or their mom or their aunt or uncle. Make sure they talk to people they don't know. Talk to the people who are going to be their real customers. That's going to be a thing as a teacher, as an advisor, as a mentor, that's probably going to be the biggest thing you need to do. And it's the thing that I've had to do as an advisor is really make sure a problem exists. Because most businesses that fail are a direct result of the fact that a problem is not big enough that someone's willing to pay for it.
Do all this survey problem validation. It's really critical to document this stuff. Call it a professional citation or professional interview. Their business plan will actually document that you talk to these 5 people. Actually cite that.
Dan's got a great point. When you're doing this process and your students are actually talking to people, write it down, have them write everything they say down. Because they can go back and read that again and really understand, was that clear enough? Did I learn enough from what they said? There's also another really good point as to why you do this, is that 9 times out of 10, you can actually take what your customers are saying and use it to develop all of your marketing materials. Because they're going to tell you exactly what they want to hear. You just regurgitate it back to them, and then it sells itself. As long as your product is really solving a need. One of the things that I have here, they avoid talking about your solution until the end of your conversations. Yes, sir. Yep, and that's a good point. So for the sake of the video and for the sake of those who might not have heard it, oftentimes you might end up as an entrepreneur talking to the wrong individuals who are not part of your target market. So if you're going after females, you don't want to be talking to males. That's kind of the easiest way I can sum that up. And make sure that those individuals, as entrepreneurs, as advisors, that the entrepreneur is talking to the right target person. Really understanding who do they want to be talking to. So the last point here, that they avoid talking about your solution until the end of your conversations. So there's a whole process around building surveys, and I'm not going to get into that whole wonderful scientific aspect today, but the thing that's most important that I am going to have you take away is when someone starts asking questions of their potential customer, they should not start out with, what do you think about this idea? Because it creates bias across the board. You have to learn more about the problem before you learn about anything, before you talk about the solution at all. Your job is just to know, does this problem exist? How great is that problem? And how do you solve this today? That third question, how do you solve it today, is a great insight into your competitive analysis. So as I said before, you can start out by doing Google research to find out who your competitors are. Doesn't really help, though. The best thing you can do is talk to your customers and say, how do you solve this today? Because if they tell you X, Y, and Z are the ones how I solve this today, that's your competitive analysis. Why don't you like X? Why don't you like Y? Why don't you like Z? Use those conversations to get really in-depth with those potential customers. They're going to be the best source of knowledge you ever had, because you want them to be paying you money someday. Only until you've gone through that process can you then introduce them to your product. However, there's often times where those initial conversations, you don't talk at all about your solution, because you haven't created your solution yet. That's all part of this lean methodology. Don't build until you have to. So learn as much as you can and then build what your customers want. Because if you build it before you start talking to your customers, you're going to end up wasting time in building something that they don't care about. So talk to your customers before you build. And that's kind of this process. It's refine your idea, talk to your customers, iterative approach to building your product. You use your customers' insight to tell you what to build. Hence, step 3. After you've talked to your customers, that's when you can build that prototype. MVP is not most valuable player. Sports fanatics. In the entrepreneur world, it is minimum viable product. And that's the minimum set of features or functionality that allows your customers to actualize the value. So more often than not, an entrepreneur wants to build what they envision to be the perfect product. That approach doesn't work because you end up building things that your customers don't want or need. So after you've learned what your customers want, focus on those one or two key problems. Don't build the Porsche. Go for the old junker to start. Learn from that, and then build your Porsche down the road. If you don't like Porsches, BMW, Mercedes.
Step 2 was validation. Step 3 we call it verification. So it's B and B. You'll hear a lot of people talk about B and B. When you do verification, it's really critical to do it as simple as possible. I see these people building incredibly complicated prototypes. You want to prove to yourself it works before you build the complicated prototype, because the complicated prototype might not work. Prototype, you can prove that it works simply. That's more important than.
Yep, to Dan's point, is validation and verification. So we're using this prototype to help us verify what we learned in our validation process. So I use a nice term, fake it until you need to make it. So there's an ability to build a product, and sometimes in the software world, there's an ability to actually do this truly without making anything. You can deliver the value without building a single line of code, just by acting like there's some sort of cool magic going on behind the scenes. So step 4 for me is all about getting those initial customers. So not just the potential customers, but getting people to use your product. So once you have a product or service that you can get in front of someone to use, make sure you have those people signed up. So as the process goes through where you're actually asking people questions, the final question needs to be, can I sign you up to test this and use it when I build it? So you already have them built in. So you need these people to help further validate your product and your idea. So the idea behind this is all saying, okay, now you're going to put your money where your mouth is. And you're going to put your time where your mouth is. You said you wanted this. You said you needed this. Now I'm giving it to you. Show me that you're actually going to do this. That's what this is all about. These are your beta testers, your early adopters. And this is where you can learn even more about what they want. So oftentimes people will lie. I know, it's crazy. But people will lie about what they say they're going to do. And once they are given something, you're going to actually see what they do with it. So it's really important that when you have a product or service that you're giving to your customers, that you have the ability to measure their usage of certain things. In the software world, this is fairly easy. We have really great things called analytics and tools to measure what buttons you click on when and how much time you spend doing something. But if you're creating the next best mousetrap, how do you measure that? You have to. You as an entrepreneur need to go in that house. You need to call those people. You need to follow up, see how much they're using it, see where they're using it, see how they're using it. You have to do that. That's how you learn. And then once you learn all that, you do it all over again. You tweak that solution, and you do it again. You go back to step 3. You keep rebuilding. It's an iterative approach. You're never going to build the right thing the first time. I'm not going to talk about steps 5 and 6, the formalized business and start and grow, because that's more about, am I going to do an LLC or a C Corp? And then the start and grow is all about execution and growing further and what you really need to build your business. For this competition, it's not really necessary. So here are some great resources to help further your education as trainers around the business model development process. Everything you needed to learn, you learned from me. I'm just kidding. So at the end of the day, these are really good tools and resources for you to use. You can use the online resource that has a lot of these links in there. You can use these links themselves. You can probably educate yourself around everything I talked about today, even further, pretty quickly. A couple hours. There's a great book called The Business Model Generation, which I don't know if it's on here, but we do have it online. It is a nice overview of this entire process and how you use it. All right. I'm going to give you guys a 15-minute break. Any questions before we do that? Pretty straightforward-ish. Yeah, so the nice thing is if you commit to compete, you don't have to do it. But you have to have everything, at least the team name and the team people and the advisors, in by February 1st. That's what I would intend, and that's why you do this process. So the reason why you do the business model canvas up front is it does help you validate the idea a little bit. You want to outline it for, you should only spend a half an hour to an hour going through this business model canvas, your first go around. And once you do that, you say, this is the idea I want to go with, and now I'm going to go talk to customers. And as soon as you talk to customers, you might find this wasn't worth my time. They don't need this. They already solve it in a meaningful way, and they're not looking to change it. So you have to scrap the whole idea and start over. And you just saved a lot of time and money because you didn't build a single thing. Yeah, so in an ideal world, we would have a lot more time, and next year we will, to get these students prepared. But right now we're kind of we were given this challenge fairly late last year, and we're doing what we can to make it work. So yes, I think the question that people always ask me is, how many customers do I need to talk to? Well, my answer is you have to talk to as many customers as possible until you stop learning new things. And that can vary. It depends on the market. I mean, you have one market, you talk to 5 people, and it's like, that's it, I'm good. No, and there's not an upper bound. And there's a lot of ways to get, there's some really good tools online to do online surveys. So the problem with social is that it's a lot of your friends and family. But that's one way to do some validation, because you'll be able to reach a lot of people quickly. Talking to people is going to be your number one way to do it, because you're going to reach the demographic you're going after. If you try social, are they really your demographic? Probably not, because they're just your peers. And then there's a website called aytm.com that actually allows you to pay to pick the target market you're going after, and they'll send them the surveys. Problem is you got to pay for that. It's a great tool for people that are actually starting businesses, not a great tool for students. But there are tools similar to that. I will look up, there's a website that's really good for early stage entrepreneurs that I'll pull up if I can remember the name of it. I have it in my bookmarks that I'll give to you guys too. That's a good resource for students or just entrepreneurs. Kind of covers all aspects of the business. Any other questions before we take a little break? All right. Thanks, guys.